we're really living through history. It's a very gratifying time to be an elected official and to see the pace of change both nationally and locally. I'm very proud that the County Council unanimously passed Bill 6014, the Earned Sick and Safe Leave Bill, and I appreciated that my colleagues offered amendments. We thoughtfully deliberated. We accepted a few. We didn't accept others, but then the sponsors of those amendments went ahead and voted for the bill on final passage, which I think is a mark of mature deliberation, that council members were able to make their points and have a thorough debate and then recognize, even though some of the amendments didn't pass, that the greater good was achieved by voting for the bill. Obviously, I'm very, very happy that we've seen a changing of hearts last week on many issues. I think what we're seeing around the country and here locally is finally Republicans and Democrats working together to respond to real needs. And so to see Governor Hogan come around on the purple line is very, very gratifying. I mean, that is a sign that we really can work together across party boundaries to get things done. And to see Governor Haley in South Carolina come out for taking down the Confederate flag, and governors across the South really responding to hate with love, is just a reason for optimism and hope about how we can move through the next set of issues, that we don't have to be divided against ourselves. We don't have to be always fighting with each other. And I think the gay marriage decision, which everyone has seen this hashtag love wins, I think that's really the narrative of just about everything that happened last week. I think we're just ushering in a hopeful and optimistic time. I'm delighted to have played a small part in the things that happened here in Montgomery County and in Maryland, and I'm just invigorated and really elated by the developments of last week, and looking forward to making even more progress. This week we will pass the privatization of the Economic Development Department. We're going to head into a new era of being much more aggressive about expanding our tax base and attracting employers to the county. And just now, just in, we've gotten the regulations from the county executive on the public campaign finance law, and so we'll refer these to the Governmental Operations Committee promptly, and hope to put those regulations in place so that we can continue our progress on taking special interest money out of our elections and continuing to build public confidence. So I just think we're in a very, very good place in public policy, both across the country and here locally. And so I'm happy to be here and answer any questions that you all may have.
On the purple line, can you comment a bit on the fact that the counties now will have to contribute more than you expected to?
That was not a surprise. I've met twice with Secretary Ron, and he had indicated that a request would likely be forthcoming, and so it didn't come as a surprise. We don't officially know we know informally, but we don't officially know the precise amount that the state will be asking for, and we don't fully know all the details of how the state is bringing down the cost. And so I'm very encouraged by the governor's decision, and I'm entirely confident that we will work through the issues. We've worked through so many issues regarding the purple line already, and there still are more issues to work through, but I certainly feel better and more optimistic about the project today than I did a week ago.
Where would the money come from? You guys have tight budgets to begin with. You might have to cut your budget now because of the wind decision. Where would the money come from?
It's not possible today to tell you where the money would come from without knowing precisely how much money we're talking about. And so what the county executive has said, and I agree with him, is that we're delighted that the governor made the decision to proceed with the project. We want the project to proceed, and as soon as the state lays out in full detail what it's proposing, then we can figure out how much we're being asked to pay and how we'll pay for it. But we really don't yet know the full details of the state's proposal yet. We know it's the purple line. We know what the governor said. We know it's the same right-of-way, the same length, the same number of stations, but we really don't have full details about their cost reduction plan, and hope to be getting those soon, and then we'll be able to respond as far as our ability to pay for whatever we're being asked for. We haven't officially been asked yet.
Secretary Ron in his comments mentioned, the design of it was like was like a Cadillac, and their costs kind of bring it back down to to a Chevy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any concern that making these changes to this make the project will make the Purple Line something less attractive to people who want to use it, or less attractive to businesses who would locate here?
Well, I was hoping for a Buick. I think a Buick is sort of halfway between a Cadillac and a Chevy. I just can't respond to the state's reductions in cost until we have details about precisely what those are.
Is there any amount that will make it not doable, let's say, on this end?
I'm not going to negotiate until we have the offer from the state. And it wouldn't be for me to negotiate anyway, but certainly the executive and the council here will respond when we have something to respond to.
Do you feel like obviously there's politics in his decision, but it kind of seems like he's throwing it back at the county saying, well, if you want it so badly, give us some more money for it. Is that how you perceive it, or am I?
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Okay.
I'm just glad he got to this point. I'm glad that he had a change of heart and that he recognized that the value of this project, despite a lot of pressure on, among his political base, not to do anything for Montgomery and Prince George's counties. And this benefits the entire state. It is true that it has substantial benefit for Montgomery and Prince George's, and we anticipated that his administration would be asking us to pay somewhat more, so it didn't come as a surprise.
Just came from a briefing on the CCT, which is an expensive project as well.
Yeah.
And is going to need at least some designated funding within the next couple of years. How is it that you're going to balance both of these big individual transportation projects?
Well, there certainly is capacity in the state's Transportation Trust Fund to do both. When our legislative delegation voted in 2013 for the increase in the gas tax, it was with full anticipation and an understanding of the costs that both the Purple Line and Quarter Cities Transitway would proceed. So it is possible to pull off both of those. But I think it'll be another chapter in this ongoing drama as to whether Governor Hogan agrees to proceed during his administration with Quarter Cities Transitway. When Secretary Ron met with us across the street in the county executive's office, he was very candid. He said he just has not had time to focus on Quarter Cities Transitway yet. So it's a top priority for Montgomery County. We want it to proceed. It'll take a little while to figure out what the state's position is, and then, as with the Purple Line, we'll respond to what the state says and does.
Is it possible that the ITA bill that the county executive had proposed and then withdrew, but is still, the task force is still working on it, is it possible that that could come into play funding in the near future CCT and even Purple Line? Because I know the original focus was BRT for that.
Well, I think we can pay for the Purple Line without setting up some new
Entity.
extra budgetary authority.
Okay.
Back a little bit to the Purple Line. Do you have a sense as to when they're going to tell you what these cost reductions are, when things might move forward, that you will know how much money you will have to put in? Is there any sort of timeline right now with these sorts of things? Because it sounded like they're not going to award the local operator's contract till next year now, I think, correct?
I don't know that we know that. Delay is costly. If the governor's interest is in saving money, delay does not save money. It costs money. There's cost inflation at every step of the process. So I would hope that matters would be resolved promptly. The original plan was to break ground in 2015. I suppose that won't now happen, but any delay just adds cost to the project. So the sooner the better. We want to get these things resolved, and we're eager to hear more from MDOT. But look, we're thankful, we're appreciative. We're glad that the governor had this change of heart, and we're looking forward to working with the governor.
One of the other things he announced last week was 270, a study to look at winding 270 or
Yes.
finding ways. What do you, from what you saw on that, what's your reaction?
We think it's great. We think it's needed, and we fully support it.
Is it, so what would you like to see happen there? They're talking about, increased shoulder use, buses being.
Right. Well, we've talked about reversible lanes. You can get more capacity by building new lanes and then using more lanes southbound in the morning and northbound in the afternoon, and I think that would free up a lot of capacity. But you would want to add lanes, and that's an expensive project. I'm glad the governor's committed to it. We support it.
You mentioned the Confederate flag. Can you talk a little bit about, expound on that and how Montgomery County might be handling it?
Handling what?
issues?
I'm not aware that we have displays of the Confederate flag on government property in Montgomery County. I heard, I'm not the source to confirm this, that where a Confederate flag was being displayed at White's Ferry, the private owner of that ferry voluntarily took it down. That would be an interesting story to pursue. I haven't been out there myself. That had been controversial in the past, but it was private property. And I'm told that the property owner of his own accord made that sensitive decision.
Could you,
No, go ahead.
could you comment on the Supreme Court ruling on the Affordable Care Act? I
Yeah.
know we already have a state
We
health
do.
exchange,
That's right.
But I can imagine, you know, for people who might have moved to neighboring states, or what is your
That's right.
reaction?
Right. So the import of the Supreme Court decision is that it enables participants in the exchanges in states that did not set up their own exchange, where the federal government is setting up the exchange, will be able to get tax subsidies to assist them to bear the cost of the premiums. That isn't specifically relevant to Maryland, but in general, across the United States, the economics of the Affordable Care Act depend on everyone participating. So had those states that were in the federal exchanges fallen out, the whole thing would have crumpled. It just wouldn't be sustainable to have some states providing subsidies and others not. And so I think the Affordable Care Act is really locked in at this point. I think it's going to be harder and harder for opponents of the act to repeal it as more and more people get enrolled and more people become accustomed to their new coverage. I'm sure it can be improved. I'm sure there are details that will continue to be worked out, but the idea that you're going to take away from more than 10 million Americans the coverage that they never had before just doesn't seem plausible to me. I can't see how that's going to occur. And in Montgomery County, we've enrolled 50,000 people in the last 2 years who didn't have health insurance before.
You mentioned you have regulations on the public finance.
We do. This is my copy, but I'll get copies to you. As I just got it like 10 minutes before coming in here. I did a quick read of it, you know, in prep for this. My sense is that it is consistent with the law, and that getting this so quickly will enable us to continue the process. I really liked your report, by the way, on the law, to inform people, educate the public, and I think there will be candidates who may ponder running for public office who might not have before, because the fundraising challenge seemed like an insuperable burden. I think to get small contributions from lots of people and have those matched will reduce the concern over special interest money, and I think will encourage more people to consider running for office.
But these regulations just set it up?
These regulations establish what will be the responsibilities of the Department of Finance, how will the accounts be set up, what will be necessary to be a certified candidate. It appears to me to be entirely consistent with the law.
And there was money put into the fund this year.
$1 million.
And you said you need how much?
Well, the guesstimate when we were debating the law was $8 million, but there's a commission to estimate costs that the council has appointed that will give us a more detailed estimate of how much we need to appropriate over the next 3 budgets.
You got a memo on Friday afternoon from Mr. Firestein. Can you
Mhm.
speak to the directive there about a budget, 2% budget cut?
Well, we are going to work together cooperatively with the executive on a savings plan. Every department has been asked to propose reductions in its budget, and our staff will work with OMB to bring before us before the end of July a savings plan. The target is $10 million. What's our target, Steve?
Well, Mr. Firestein, I think, has mentioned it was between 10 and 20.
Between-
I think the 2% for county government would amount to about 25. So it's in that range.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to need to tighten our belts and start the new fiscal year in a somewhat more conservative posture than we thought we would when we passed the budget back in May. This is not uncommon. In my time here, I've taken, I think, 4 of these savings plans that we've worked through. So I'm confident that we'll do it cooperatively with the executive branch and get through it before we leave for the August recess.
The paid sick leave, any more on that? When is that expected to take effect as well?
The effective date is October 1st, 2016. Late last week, I communicated with our director of the Human Rights Office to ask him to work with employers to disseminate information as early as possible so that employers understand what their obligations are under the law. But they have more than a year to get into compliance. Any other questions? All righty, have a great day. Thank you all for being here.